Welcome to today's video. I'm talking about how and why you overcomplicate your life and how and why you overthink everything. And if this is someone that sounds like you, then definitely listen, because today I'm going to share some thoughts and some ideas on how you can actually break this cycle and get out of it permanently. And it really is a perception shift. So the information I'm sharing in today's video is going to be all about shifting your viewpoint and your perception about yourself, about your life, about the way that you approach things. Because everything comes down to our approach, right? And we can approach a single problem or a single situation from a million different ways, right? And you just have to understand that the simplest way is actually always the best way. So most people actually struggle in life because they overcomplicate their life with overthinking. So overthinking comes from a lack of clarity and also from a lack of self-confidence. And as I coach clients and as I talk to people, this is something that I'm aware of time and time again. It's like the same thing sort of is repeatedly coming up for people, and the same ways of perceiving and looking at situations always seems to come up. And that's why I decided to make a video about this, because it's a very, very common problem. I think most of us actually overthink and overcomplicate so many situations and so many circumstances in our life that is not necessary. And I just want to offer you some solutions on how you can really move through that, move past that, and get out of that habit, right? Because it is kind of a habit to overthink and to overprocess and overanalyze, right? And what happens, when you overthink and overanalyze something, analysis paralysis kicks in, right? The more you analyze a situation or a work or anything in life, the more you overanalyze it, the more you're going to be paralyzed to actually move forward on it. There's going to be such a lack of clarity, a lack of understanding in terms of how to move forward. And that always comes from this overthinking. So something that I have become aware of in my own life, it's something that I was doing on a regular basis, and it was running on autopilot, and I didn't even realize. And once I figured it out, and once I had this perception shift around overthinking, I have now really simplified my processes, the way that I go about doing things, the way that I go about accomplishing my goals, the way that I go about becoming the best version of myself. Because as we move through life, the whole purpose of life is self-mastery, right? It's to become a better version of yourself. It's to become a wiser, a more well-rounded, grounded individual. And you can't become that if you're always overthinking, if you're always stuck in paralysis because you don't know what to do, or you don't know what to say, or you don't know how to act or how to behave, right? So lack of self-confidence is one of the biggest driving forces behind overthinking. And what I've come to realize now, coaching so many, literally hundreds and hundreds of clients over the years, that lack of self-confidence for most people generally comes from their childhood. So it comes from unacknowledged potential and a lack of recognition in childhood. And I know I can certainly put my hand up on that one. That was something that I experienced as a kid. There was definitely a lack of acknowledgement for my needs, for who I was as an individual. Like, my parents didn't really, they couldn't really see who I was, and therefore they couldn't really understand what my true foundational needs were, right? Because we all have basic needs in life, right? Food, shelter, water, clothing, that kind of thing. But then what about the emotional needs? What about the mental needs of a child, right? And those are often overlooked by parents, unfortunately, or caregivers, or just extended family, right? And if that is the situation, then that child is going to take such a hit with their self-confidence, and it's going to essentially break the self-confidence, and it starts to crumble apart more and more and more as that child gets older, and then as they mature into like a teenager and into adulthood. It really, by the time they reach adulthood, usually it's pretty well flatlined, right? Confidence is at that point destroyed for the most part, which is why oftentimes teenagers or even like youth will, rebel and act out and do all kinds of, things that they know they shouldn't be doing. And they're doing that because they're trying to create a sort of sense of self-worth within them. They're trying to figure out who they are. They're trying to understand their own strengths, their own weaknesses. And if unfortunately the parents are very unconscious, they're just not going to be able to support that process and that growth within the child. So, think about your own childhood and how you were raised and how much attention was given to, like I said, your foundational needs, like your emotional, your mental, your spiritual needs, whether that was acknowledged or not, because that's going to really help you understand, where you're at right now with your confidence and what you can now do to actually build that confidence, that foundation back up within yourself. So much of the population actually suffers from this issue, unfortunately. So I wrote here, is it any wonder most people don't have a specific life goal, or they don't know who they are and where they're headed in life? And that is a classic symptom of a lack of self-confidence and a lack of surety within the self. And even people that I've talked to actually that, tell me that they do have an understanding of who they are and they know what they want out of life and they know how to proceed forward. Even those people I often find to have actually some foundational issues with their self-confidence, because what those people do is they become sort of oblivious to the lack of self-confidence that they have, and they build a completely fake persona upon themselves and project that out into the world. So they'll decide in their head, like, I've got my life figured out. I plan to work at XYZ company until I retire. And then once I retire, then I'm going to start kind of like living and having fun and doing this and that and the other thing. And that is a very false perception. And that is also a very false identity, because 9 times out of 10, people that I talk to are not happy doing that. And I have met people who are at retirement age now, and I've coached people who are at retirement age, and they told me, well, that was my plan my whole time. I thought I had everything figured out, and I worked until I got to retirement. But then once they hit retirement and we're sitting down and having a real conversation about how they feel about their life and how they feel about themselves, and they're telling me like, not good, and they feel lost and they feel confused and they have like an identity crisis, right? They don't know who they are. And that happens because they built their entire life on a false identity, and they most likely went through a programming of like, do this, get this job, work that same job until you're 65, whatever years old, and then you can retire, and then you can, start living your life on your terms in the way that you want. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. That is not a happy life. That is not it's not an authentic life, and it is certainly not a life of deep connection. It becomes very superficial. And that's what I really recognize within a lot of people, is that they live very superficial lives without depth, without meaning, without fulfillment, without satisfaction. And they just kind of go through the motions of life. They go through the motions of each day, right? And it's just kind of on autopilot, and it sort of just goes through that way. And it becomes very mundane. It becomes very complacent, very boring. And they just don't really have, they're not really squeezing the juice out of life. You know what I'm saying? So, most people are highly disconnected from themselves, overcomplicating everything and living in an underlying state of stress and anxiety becomes a normal day-to-day experience for them. And like I said, this cycle runs on autopilot. It just becomes normal because they get used to it. And then, they don't know how to change. So then they don't know how to get out of that cycle. So overthinking is also fueled by a lack of trust in yourself. And the client I was coaching yesterday, it's exactly what I was saying to her. And that's sort of the conclusion that we came to, and that she realized actually in the end for herself. Like, I helped her understand that the biggest reason why she was overthinking everything was because she actually was truly lacking self-confidence within herself. And she was lacking trust within her own intuition. And if you're not trusting your intuition, because your intuition is what? It's like your built-in receiver, right? That God communicates through. So if you're not trusting your intuition, that also means that you're not trusting God. You're not trusting those messages, those calls that are coming through that are trying to convey information for you that is actually trying to lead you to the right path, right? And most often people don't trust their intuition because it was never encouraged to be fostered, to be nurtured, to be strengthened. Intuition, I find, is like a muscle. And the more you use your intuition, the more you follow through on those hits of intuition, the more you're actually going to strengthen and flex that muscle and make it stronger. The more it's going to become very natural for you to really start leaning on that inner feeling, that inner knowing within you when it comes to any decision in life, right? And that's how you build that trust back up within yourself. That trust that was broken within you when you were a child, right? That trust in yourself and that trust in your own choices, because oftentimes that is broken within children at a very, very early age. So some of the solutions to overcoming overcomplication and overthinking is simplifying everything that you do. So hear me out on this one, because I know it's going to sound simple, but at the same time, it's like I need to remind you that keeping things simple is the way forward. It is what is going to bring you all of the solutions that you're seeking. And it's going to put you on that path of ease and of peace. So look for the easiest, most logical way to complete tasks that require the least amount of steps. And the more that you start to practice this simplicity and simplifying everything that you do, the more you're going to start cracking and breaking that pattern of overthinking and overcomplicating things in your life. And the more you're actually going to start to build self-confidence as a result. Because when you keep things simple and you get that quick result, or you get a result, maybe not quickly, but you're still getting a very positive result because you kept everything simple, that's going to really start boosting your confidence. It's going to boost your self-worth and your understanding and your trust within yourself, and knowing that you can make good decisions, and all you were doing this whole time was just overcomplicating everything. So approach everything that you do with an attitude of fun. And I want to talk about fun here and kind of break that down a little bit, because people that were generally kind of messed up as children, and people that didn't have, like I said, the right support, and their emotional, spiritual, and mental needs were not met when they were children, those people oftentimes have a huge issue with fun. They don't know how to have fun. They can't allow themselves to have fun. Fun is usually frivolous, and it is usually a waste of time for those individuals. And that's just a built-in perception that comes along with a lack of confidence. And especially if you had a parent that was, always saying to you, like, you can have fun once you've done X, Y, and Z. Those types of parents don't realize that in that moment, every time that you say that to your kid, what you're programming them to learn is that life is not fun, life has to be hard, and that everything has to be challenging, and that the only time that you deserve a reward is if you have done something that was hard, difficult, or unpleasant, or even made you suffer. That's messed up, right? Because that is not at all how life works, and that is not at all how God wants us to live our lives. We are meant to infuse joy and fun into everything that we do. Because think of a little child, think of a toddler, right? They're not overcomplicating playing. They're not overthinking when they're playing. They're just simply playing. They're just completely in the moment, in the present, and they're allowing themselves to go with that flow, right? So then what happens when we become adults? Why do we all of a sudden think that we have to make everything hard and difficult and so serious, and then we can have fun, and then we can have some enjoyment or have some pleasure in our lives? It's a very, very false illusion, and it's very much 3D programming, right? So in order for us to break out of that and bust out of 3D programming, we have to reconsider fun and how we approach it and our perception about it. So switch from this attitude of what I need to do into an attitude of what can I do? Because for me personally too, because I work from home and because I have to have discipline when it comes to managing my time, when it comes to managing literally every area of my life, what I was really doing before was I was always in this perpetual state of anxiety when it came to my work, when it came to accomplishing goals, when it came to progress, because I always approached it from this perspective of I need to do X, Y, and Z, and I need to get this done, and I need to work on that, and I need to make some time for this. And that actually encompasses so much anxiety with it and has so much just difficulty and lack of pleasure in it, that approach. So now instead of looking at things like that, I look at what can I get done today? Do you feel the lightness of that as I say it? What can I get done today? It is more of like you're challenging yourself, but you're challenging yourself like in a good way. It doesn't come from a place of pressure. It doesn't come from this place of like, oh, I must get this done, and there's no stress involved, right? What can I do today? What can I accomplish today? It just frees up actually so much energy. And I always see everything as a container. So it just like empties this container. And when your internal container is empty, you have so much more space for fresh ideas to come, for creativity to flow, and for actually you to get into flow state, right? So try to switch up the whole like, this is what I need to do, to this is what I can do. And what I can do feels good, feels a lot better. So the other thing is to eliminate distractions and reduce dopamine addiction. Something I also notice for myself, and I notice within my clients, and especially in today's world with all of the phone and the scrolling and everything that we have access to, dopamine addiction is unprecedentedly on the rise. It is such an incredibly huge problem for society today because we all want this like instant gratification constantly when it comes to anything, right? We're not willing to be patient when it comes to things playing out. It's just we want that instant gratification. So if you could start reducing your dopamine hits through putting that phone down, not scrolling as much, not watching as much content, and being super selective about what you watch, then you're going to start to retrain your brain to level out those dopamine receptors so that you're not constantly craving the hit. And you're also allowing your brain waves to slow down to get more into like alpha state. And alpha state is really where creativity comes from. That's where all that juicy creativity can start flowing from. So yeah, so it's like allow that neural firing to slow down in your brain, which will also create feelings of peace and contentment within you and relaxation. So it's a great way to actually relieve anxiety. Believe it or not, this huge dopamine addiction that our society currently has created a ton of anxious people. Why do you think every other person nowadays has anxiety or has depression or has all these issues? That's why, because we're constantly on this mill, right? Endless treadmill of dopamine hit and wanting that. And then when you don't get it, you feel unhappy instantly. So, because dopamine is a happy hormone, right? And talking about going back to fun for a minute. So, what is your attitude about fun? And how do you perceive fun? Because that is also something that has to be really addressed when it comes to overthinking and overcomplicating things. So is it the whole I can have once I've done XYZ? Or are you able to have more of an attitude of like, you know what, I'm going to try to make everything that I do as fun as possible so that I can really have enjoyment in my life on a moment to moment basis, not just like once in a while, but on a moment to moment basis. So an attitude of fun eliminates overthinking. It eliminates overcomplicating things because energetically they're polar opposites, right? Fun and overthinking actually are not friends. So overthinking is not fun and fun is not overthinking, right? So It also takes the pressure and that sense of responsibility away, making it easier to complete a task. I noticed this with my projects. I noticed this with really everything nowadays that I have to get done. The more fun I infuse into it, the less I feel pressure about getting it done. And the more I can actually get it done and the faster I can get it done, because that pressure is now eliminated and gone. And I can really just get into that state of flow. And then when I'm in my state of flow, it's like incredible how much creativity comes to mind, how many ideas flow, and how much just really opens up when it comes to productivity. The other thing is release perfectionism. The more that you're okay with being imperfect and doing things imperfectly, the more you're going to be fostering self-acceptance within yourself. And this is going to shift your perception about your mistakes, right? So let's talk about mistakes for a moment. When you make a mistake, what is your initial gut reaction? Like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Or, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Is it that? Or can you start looking at mistakes from a perception of, wow, what an opportunity to learn. Mistakes or a lack in understanding something is the seed from which growth and personal development springs to life from. Also, it helps you to see where improvement would make you happier. So you release perfectionism and start looking at all of your mistakes as a huge opportunity to just choose a different way of doing something, a way that will make you a lot happier. That in itself is going to completely bust you out of that comfort zone and bust you out of the uncomfortable zone of always being hard on yourself every time that you mess up, right? So shift your focus from mistakes to solutions to those mistakes. And again, it's all about like, man, if I wouldn't have messed this up, I never would have had, another idea of how I could do it better or how I could do it differently. And we actually cut off our own creativity and our own flow through focusing on the mistakes. It's an incredible waste of time. So once you make a mistake, what is the simplest solution to fixing it? And I'm going to use a very, very simple example, okay? A very common example, actually. So when you, for example, say something that hurts somebody, and and you become aware that you have hurt that individual's feelings, what would be the simplest solution to that? Because I know what a lot of people do when they do that. They will hide, they will avoid, they will dodge, they will do everything and anything in their power to not have to face that individual again. Why? Because they're feeling shame, because they feel stupid, because they feel like they messed up, because they feel kind of maybe even worthless, right? Like there's a whole series of negative emotions that are now tied to that mistake because you're looking at the mistake incorrectly. However, if you start to just think for yourself, like for a moment, okay, I messed up, I said something stupid, or I know I hurt this person. The simplest thing that I can do is literally just go up to them, if you have that opportunity to, look them square in the eye and say, I'm sorry. That sincere apology, just to say, I'm sorry, I messed up, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, I didn't realize what I was saying, I didn't realize how my words were impacting you, is a game changer. You immediately shift the energy. You immediately have created a solution, a very simple solution to a problem. And you can literally apply that to every single mistake that you've ever made, right? To yourself. So you mess something up and say you break it, then you go through this process within yourself of feeling guilt, feeling shame, feeling this, that, and the other thing. But then just look at it and be like, okay, I can't unbreak it. Maybe I can't glue that thing I broke back together. Okay, I can't unbreak it. But what I can do is, say if it's an inanimate object, but what I can do is I can either replace it, I can make a new one, or I can buy a new one, right? Like there's different approaches that you can take. But dwelling on the fact that you broke it isn't going to serve you. It's not going to serve the thing that you broke. And it's not going to pull you out of that feeling, that low vibrational feeling. And the whole purpose of this video, and the reason why I'm saying everything I'm saying, because I know I'm saying very simple things, but the reason why I'm saying it all is to help you understand that the longer you dwell in that mistake, and the longer you sit in the shame of it and feeling guilty and bad for it, the longer you're actually just perpetuating the problem, and you're not fixing it for the other person, you're not fixing it for yourself, you're not fixing it for anybody. And you're not allowing yourself off the hook. You're not allowing healing to happen and to take place. Therefore, you are not allowing your happiness to flow, for you to experience happiness. And I find that to be ridiculous. When a child, makes a mistake and falls and whatever and hurts themselves, what do? They get back up. Don't allow yourself to sit in energy that pulls you down, that drains you, that keeps you in a sense of shame. Because I have news for you. You're going to make a lot more mistakes in life, and so am I, and so are all of us, because that is normal. Like I said, mistakes are the seed from which growth can happen, from which personal development can happen. So don't think for a second that you're not going to make mistakes. Don't worry about it. Stop overthinking it. Stop overcomplicating it, and just really go straight to the simplest solution. And again, sometimes I would say this is common sense, but it is not always common sense for everyone. So just take everything I said and sort of process it, think about it, and think of how it might apply to your life. How can you make your life more simple at this time? How can you uncomplicate situations? And how can you let yourself off the hook for past mistakes? And how can you move forward now and infuse more fun into the solutions of those mistakes and say, you know what? Yeah, I messed up that thing, but you know what? I'm going to start approaching it this way. And what can I do with it? And how can I really make it more fun? That's what it all comes down to, guys. And this is one last thing I want to share, is that this all comes down to the way your entire life experience is depends on how you approach your mistakes, depends on how you look at overthinking and overcomplicating things. Because life consists of what? It consists of moments. So in each moment, you have a choice to have good moments and good experiences, and to experience love and magic and wonder and awe. Or you have moments where you are constantly creating difficulty and stress and anxiety and depression and sadness and all of these like lower vibrational energies. It's just a choice. How do you want your moment to moment experience to be like? And what kind of energy do you want to be bathing in and existing in on a continuous basis? Ask yourself these questions, and you will naturally gravitate towards choosing more fun, choosing more happiness, choosing more simplicity, and less overthinking, less overcomplicating, so that you can really accomplish the tasks and the goals that you have set out for yourself. And have tasks and have goals so that you have something to reach, something to look forward to, and release the dopamine. Forget the instant gratification, but instead pay attention to living in the moment and just loving each and every moment. So that's my 2 cents on that today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, for tuning in. Do hit a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next one. Have an awesome day, guys. Take care.